All right, stop prepping right now, at least until after you hear what I have to say, because sometimes prepping can actually get in the way of accomplishing the preparedness goals that you have set for yourself. And this is something that you need to consider because it's part of being strategic about becoming more prepared. And there are generally some things that hold people back from reaching those goals that all of us have to struggle with from time to time. And I wanted to discuss some of that with you all because it's not always just about the gear, the equipment, the supplies, the amount of storage and everything else. Sometimes you have to put strategic plans into place in order to get yourself to a better situation that allows you to become better prepared thereafter. So we need to talk about that. Now, Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. Thanks to them, I can make videos like this one and give you my honest opinion about how to move forward in your preparedness when it comes to things that are a little bit above and beyond just buying more stuff. So a big thanks to Midway USA. So one of the biggest hurdles that people have when it comes to trying to be better prepared is having the financial resources to be able to do so. And that's a huge roadblock for a lot of people, which I'm very sure many of you are aware of. Now here's the thing, if you're prepping, right, you're trying to be prepared for an shtf type event or whatever it might be, and you do not have the financial resources to be as prepared as you want to be. Maybe you need to get 2 weeks of preparedness put aside, but you just literally can't afford it. You need to stop prepping and you need to prioritize what it is that will allow you to move forward more easily, right? So focusing on enhancing your ability to generate more income is going to be more rewarding than just putting aside some canned food and having a backpack, right? So from personal experience, let me just share some of my anecdotal evidence of this for you so that way we can be on the same page. I am not rich. I was not born rich, and it took me a very long time to get into the place and situation where I am now. And a big part of what got me to where I am now is by working at the same place for a very long time while always having side projects as well. Because working the job that was paying the bills wasn't enough for me to accomplish my goals when it came to not just being more prepared, but having access to the things that I wanted as an adult, right? So owning a home, owning vehicles, being able to afford to take care of my family and provide my children with a good future, right? So flat out, I worked for Outback Steakhouse for 10 years. 10 years. Worked my way up the ladder and eventually got myself into a good position there. And during that time, I was either in a band where we put out albums and played shows and toured around and didn't really make money, but it was still a project that I was working on that required energy and effort and input. And the whole purpose of that was to hopefully find some moniker of success at some point. And then when that wasn't really working out anymore, I maintained my position working with Outback Steakhouse and opened a company with my business partner at the time, which was called EDC Specialties, which you can find even right now, edcspecialties.com. And that was while I was managing an Outback Steakhouse, working 60 hours a week. I also opened a business from the ground up and worked there many hours a week, sacrificing a lot of time and energy and resources in order to hopefully move myself into a better situation where I could afford to be more prepared or whatever it might be. And that job with Outback Steakhouse eventually required me to relocate in order to earn more income. So I had to part ways with EDC Specialties. I took that better paying job and then I used that position to find a much better paying and a higher positional job here in North Dakota, which then brought me out here, paid for my relocation, and paid me more than I'd ever earned in my entire life. And then while doing that and working a very high intensity job with a lot of stress, which required many, many hours, and I never had 2 days off in a row or anything like that, right? I also started this YouTube channel, which started in 2019. And here we are today in 2024. I no longer work that job because this channel has provided me with a means of taking care of my family without having to be in that high stress environment where I never got to spend time with my family and see my children grow up, right? So that's a huge benefit and something that I'm extremely grateful for. But the reason I'm sharing this is because during that time, I was never as prepared as I wanted to be. I didn't either own property or own a home where I felt like I was in a secure location, or I didn't have somewhere I could feel permanent, where I could make permanent changes, such as installing a solar system, or such as having redundancy plans in place, or anything else along those lines. And sometimes I ended up in a neighborhood where things were more dangerous, right? And so beyond having means of self-protection, aka firearms, right, and some level of training, and beyond having a bug out bag and some food and water set aside, right, which was just kind of, at least for me growing up in Florida, something that was just built into me. I was told my entire life to have some of those things on hand, right? So it just was something that always kind of stuck around. I didn't have what I have now for that entire time of my life, right? I had to invest a lot of energy, a lot of effort, and sacrifice quite a bit, including moving away from friends, family, and a support structure into a much more, let's just say, or a much less densely populated environment, right? I was going to say much more ugly, but which is true. Regardless, I'm in a much better place now. So if financial roadblocks are stopping you from getting to the level of preparedness that you want to meet, that should be your priority. How do I fix this? And then by prioritizing that, you should understand that that might require a level of sacrifice that maybe you just personally aren't willing to make at this point in time, which is something you have to be realistic about as well. I didn't want to move away from everything and everyone that I ever knew, or at least for a large portion of my life, right? I lived in California for a decade. I didn't want to move away from there just to make some more money. But the other benefits of moving away from there, including finding myself somewhere with a much better cost of living, finding myself somewhere much safer, finding myself somewhere where there's a lot better of a future for my children, was worth the fact that I had to start all over. And a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. So these are things you got to consider. Now, that's just based on the financial aspect, which I know is a huge one for everybody right now. And I'm just sharing this with you because I feel like by giving you my personal experience and kind of what got me to where I am now, hopefully shows you that it doesn't necessarily require an act of God, right? I'm just some regular guy who worked in a restaurant situation for a long time, right? For the majority of my career, I worked in hospitality. I mean, that's just the truth of it. And then I always had side projects too, because I was never where I wanted to be. But in order to move forward, that additional effort was required, right? And so apply that to other parts of your preparedness that are holding you back, such as a big one tends to be physical fitness, right? And right now it's 91 degrees out. I found a nice little shaded spot, and that's why we're recording here, because it's just really hot. And my phone, which is what I'm using to record on right now, probably wouldn't be able to handle a video this long. So thanks for hanging out with me in the shade. But physical fitness is important when it comes to being outside in the heat and being able to withstand it, right? And a lot of people struggle with that. And I think it should be a preparedness goal of everyone, unless you're physically incapable of it. You have some level of handicap that prevents you from being in good shape, right? Which is understandable. That just happens, right? And then I think those people should apply their minds to their preparedness as much as possible, learn as much as they can, be that, knowledge source for their group or their immediate family or whoever's around them. But if you are capable of being physically fit, but you just haven't taken the necessary steps to do so, then that needs to be a priority for you over just prepping, right? If you're just prepping and every week or every 2 weeks when you get paid, you go to the store and you're buying some canned food, and then you're buying some additional water, or you're adding to your stocks or whatever it is, I mean, that's good. That's what all of us are pretty much doing here, right? But if you're not actually prioritizing the things that will reach those goals for you, then you're just buying time and actually wasting some of that energy and time on something that's not going to get you there, right? And so with physical fitness, it's the same thing. I started by just walking on a treadmill for about a mile, and I did some push-ups, and then I lifted some weights, right? And that's what I started with. And now I'm at the point where, until recently when I took a vacation, right, I was running 5 miles straight in 50 minutes, so 10-minute miles at a 5% incline, and then also tacking on a mile's worth of warm up and cool down walking, and then doing, let's just say, a lot of push-ups and lifting a lot of weights, to the point where I'm pretty much in the best shape of my entire life. I put on a little weight since vacation, and today I only ran 3.5 miles because I think my body's just kind of mad about the whole concept at this point. But I'm still forcing myself to do it and forcing myself to get back to that level again because I have to, because I've prioritized physical fitness as being highly important for my own preparedness. Because we don't know what's going to happen. If you do find yourself out and about during an emergency event, you have to be able to deal with those circumstances with what you have. And sometimes your body is all you'll have, right? And the clothes on it. And it is very important. So if you know that you want to be more physically fit, and it's one of your goals for preparedness, then maybe instead of spending the time buying stuff or whatever it is, you just need to sacrifice that time to get in better shape. And I know that's hard to hear, and I know that's not necessarily what we all want to be doing right now, but you have to prioritize what your energy is being used on the most and what it is you're trying to eventually accomplish. And if what you're doing right now isn't actually moving that goalpost any further or any closer, I guess is what we'll say. How does that work? I'm not sure. But anyway, if it's not actually getting you there and it's not progressing you towards that goal, then in many ways you're just standing still, right? And that's a big part of the problem. Prepping is important, but don't let it stop you from reaching what it is you're actually trying to get to. And if you're not willing to sacrifice at all, but then have expectations of eventually reaching these macro preparedness goals of having property, having a bunker, having a backup power system that relies on solar and being completely off grid, having guns and ammo and somewhere to actually shoot them and train with them and enjoy them for what they are. If you're not working towards that, but that's what you want, then your priorities aren't correct, generally, right? So there's a lot of things that get in the way that make it very hard. Financially, I would say that part is like the hardest, right? Which is why I started with that, because it's hard to just tell people to make more money, right? Like that's not easy to do no matter what. And some of you are doing what as best as you can right now, working 2 jobs, 3 jobs, doing side gigs or whatever it might be. But you also have to wonder if where you are or what you're doing isn't working, then something probably needs to change, right? And that change, whatever it may be, should be prioritized over buying that other rifle, right? Or buying a gas mask or getting another food bucket. And this is coming from someone who tells everyone to be prepping all the time, right? Like that's mostly what I talk about here. Like keep prepping, keep prepping, keep prepping. But if I don't share with how I was able to get myself into the position I'm in now regarding preparedness, then maybe there's not a good enough roadmap for somebody else who wants to be in the similar position at some point. And I thought by just talking about this, maybe it would help at least a few of you restructure some of your plans or your strategy about how you're going to get there, you know? And the same can be said about location. That's a huge hindrance for a lot of people's preparedness. And your location dictates a lot about what you can or can't do. And that is a really big one that I see all the time. If you are struggling financially to get better prepared, but you live somewhere like California, where you have a really high cost of living and wages are not good enough to cover that cost, there's not a good chance for you to find yourself in just a great situation all of a sudden where you have disposable income that can be used for preparedness, right? And so in that situation, if you know that where you are is stopping you from being able to afford to move forward, then the priority should probably be to get somewhere else where that's not as much of an issue, right? And the same can be said about if you live somewhere like New York and you want to be better prepared in the sense of being able to defend yourself, but where you live says you can't buy body armor, and you also can't have a lot of different types of firearms, which would be more applicable to personal defense, especially here in the United States. But you live in that one place where that's really a big problem, and one of your preparedness goals is to not have to worry about that anymore, then a priority of yours should probably be to find somewhere else where you can do those things or get those things. And the same can be said about your level of safety based on location. If you live in Detroit, Michigan, and you know you're already at high risk of involving yourself in a dangerous scenario or being the victim of a crime, but you're prepping for the apocalypse, right? Or you're prepping for an shtf event, but you live in one of the most dangerous cities in the country, your priority should be to get somewhere where that level of danger isn't already inherently bad. And then prepping for those existential scenarios becomes a lot more reasonable. But where you are right now compared to where I am is like shtf, right? Like where I live right now compared to Skid Row in LA is the difference of a first world and a third world country, right? But we're in the United States regardless. And so don't let your location be the reason why you can't be as prepared as you want, especially some of my Canadian friends here that I know are fans of the channel and are very supportive, which I greatly appreciate. And of course, we love our Canadian brethren, but we don't like the laws and the government you guys have to deal with, right? And maybe you gotta go. Like I don't have the answers for you on an individual basis, but these are roadblocks that people tend to get stuck on. And those roadblocks, in the sense of removing them if possible, should be a priority if they can be, right? I understand there's individual circumstances that prevent that at times, but you also have to really think deep down and consider what you actually care about and what you're willing to sacrifice to achieve these goals. And it's not easy, like in my situation, being away from family, being away from friends, being away from everything I knew for 10 years of my life. It's not easy, but it's the second time I've done it, right? I grew up in Florida. I spent 20 years there. Then I moved to California. I spent 10 years there. Now I live in North Dakota. Once you do it a couple times, you realize it's not a big deal and you'll make it work one way or another. But the first time can be scary. But if you allow that to stop you from progressing, then how are you going to get to the point where you need to be, right? You're going to have to make sacrifices. I don't know what to say. For me to be in the physical shape that I'm currently in order to have a healthier lifestyle and be more prepared in the sense of dealing with an emergency scenario, I have to take 2 hours out of my day every other day to run for an hour and then to work out and do calisthenics and everything else, right? And I hate it. Absolutely hate it. It's a huge chunk of time. It's miserable, right? Like nobody likes working out. Don't lie to me. I feel good about it after, but the process itself is not a good time. But the results are worth the sacrifice of that time and that suffering, because now I'm in much better shape than I've ever been before. And I feel like I can actually get through a problem if I have to, right? And the same can be said about my financial situation. Working on those side gigs eventually paid off to allowing me to better myself to the point where I could be more prepared. But it took a lot of effort and a lot of energy and a lot of sleepless nights. And for those of you who've been around for the channel for a very long time, you might not realize this, but in those early days, I would be working 12 to 14 hours. I'd get off work and I'd be recording a lot of those videos at 2 in the morning in my basement, right? And then I'd get up and go to work 4 hours later or 5 hours later or whatever time I had to leave by. So it wasn't always fun, but that's what I felt I needed to do to move things forward towards what it was I was hoping to reach, which was a goal of being more prepared and running this channel and being part of this community, which I am never going to not be grateful for. And I'm not ever going to lack any appreciation when it comes to what you all have done for me, which is why I'm sharing this personal anecdotal experience with you all right now, because you deserve to at least hear it. I don't know if it will help you. I don't know if it will apply to your preparedness planning or anything like that. But it is real, and it is what I have experienced. And by sharing that, I'm just hoping that maybe it'll help somebody restructure their strategy, right? Prioritize what's getting in your way and get it out of your way. And then you can prep as much as you want, right? Then prepping isn't stopping you from getting as prepared as you want. Because prepping is a lot of time, energy, and effort. It just is. And if it's not hard to do because you're buying your way through most of it, well, the energy you're expending in order to be able to afford to buy all that stuff is still energy, right? So that's why I started this video by saying you need to stop prepping. Not because it's a bad idea to be prepping. Clearly, that's not how I feel. But you shouldn't let it get in the way of where you want to be, right? And the big secret that's out there, right, that nobody really says out loud because, I don't know, maybe it's offensive or exclusive or whatever you want to call it, but big secret is that if you can afford more, you can prep more, right? And that's just the truth. And so if, like I said, the biggest one is going to be financial capability. If your finances are in the way of your ability to be as prepared as you want, then dealing with that should be the priority over prepping. Because if you can get rid of that roadblock or figure out a way to increase your revenue or whatever it might be, then you'll be able to be better prepared. I mean, that's just the honest truth. I don't know what to say. So I really hope this helps somebody. I really do. I just felt like I needed to put out a video like this to let everyone know that I'm not special and that I was never given, the golden ticket. I don't have a silver spoon. I never had one in my mouth when I was born, I am not rich by any means, but I am in many ways where I want to be. And so I thought maybe by sharing this experience of mine and sharing what it took for me to get where I am now, it could help somebody. That's just what it is, right? And listen, there's a lot of mistakes made along the way. And I used to party pretty hard. So I could have got here a lot sooner if I would have been more focused, but I still got here and there's still more I want to do. And I'm still not done. But I know it's hard, and I know a lot of people are where I was many years ago. And if someone had this conversation with me back then, maybe I could have prioritized things that would have had a bigger impact, right? So, if you need anything else from me, you know where to go, magicprepper.com. It's a good place to go. It's got a contact form, all that good stuff. But I really want you to think about this. Are you just prepping to be prepping, but is that what you actually need to be prioritizing? Or could you get way more done if you can fix some of those things, like your financial resources, personal fitness, or your location? And by fixing those things, would you be light years ahead of where you could be right now by just getting more canned food, right? Have that conversation with yourself and be honest about it. And then if there's literally nothing you can do about the things that are in your way, do the best that you can with what you have where you are. And I think that's pretty solid advice, and it seems to ring true most of the time. So let me know in the comments if you found this helpful or if you just think I'm a jerk now. Because I will say one thing. I definitely didn't get into the positions and have the career path that I had by being really nice to everybody all the time.